Okay, we're going to get started. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it. I'm Jay Bellissimo, COO of Vonage, and Matt McBride, who is the CEO of our favorite company, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we wanted to spend time with you today and just share with you some of our views of healthcare and technology and the impact it's having. Matt at Men has done amazing things over the last several months as it relates to some of the healthcare practices. So I want to start by just giving a little perspective on what we're seeing, and then I'd like to turn over to Matt for some of his perspective, and then we're going to open up for questions and answers. We have about 20 minutes, so we want to be mindful of your time. So just starting from my view of what we're seeing right now in the market, when you look, as you know, over the last several years, we've seen a big increase in video, and you look at the emergence of some of the programmable telehealth capabilities, we see a great new opportunity for that whole end-to-end patient journey. And when you look at the hybrid world we've all been living in over the last several years, and you look at just the expansion of all the different digital impact, the digital media, the digital channels, we think there's a great opportunity to create these patient engagement platforms and really transform the business. And with that, ultimately, it comes back to how do we together use some of these enabling and emerging technologies to better create a platform so the patients and the healthcare providers can better connect through these platforms. And what Matt and his company have done is they've been able to working very closely with the practitioners as well as the various providers. We've seen a lot of opportunity to better connect and create this patient engagement platform to make sure that we derive the value that we expect out of this type of communication. There's a lot of new technologies. There's AI being used for a lot of different ways and techniques. And as we look at where we're going, we think there's an incredible opportunity to continue to leverage, again, some of these technologies and to really help better connect the ecosystem with a heavy focus on the patients and really connecting them with all the healthcare providers. So with that, Matt, again, thank you very much for joining us today. And obviously, you're the founder, CEO of Men, and you've been doing this a long time. And I know you've seen a lot out there during that time, and you've created one of the leading patient engagement platforms. And I think, Matt, you have over 20,000 practitioners, 5 million patients that you're servicing through your engagement platform. And it'd be great for you just to share with everyone maybe a quick intro before we get into questions and answers about your company, your mission, and how you continue to see the markets move and how you see everyone evolve in this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jay. And we are about to celebrate our 10 millionth video appointment here pretty soon, so we're excited about that. Yeah, basically, what Mend is we are a complete patient engagement platform. So whether an organization wants to help schedule a brand new appointment, allow a patient to make a change, do their forms, make payments, we can facilitate the telemedicine appointment itself. We can follow up afterwards, maybe for a satisfaction survey. Maybe there's another payment that needs to be collected. We have secure two-way messaging. So really, I think patients are looking for health organizations to kind of meet them where they are, right? In every other industry, we're seeing technology create these conveniences and creating greater access. And so patients, like ourselves, I think, are looking for healthcare organizations to create those kinds of experiences. And that's exactly what our platform does. So whether it be a virtual appointment, an in-person appointment, going to somebody's home, we enable large healthcare organizations to create that digital conduit to patients.
Great, thanks, Matt. And again, we'll have some additional questions and answers. If you have any, please just raise your hand. But I have a couple just to get started. The first one, Matt, I know we've talked a lot over the time about just the market, right? It's all about patients and the centricity around patients and how to better connect them with healthcare providers. And one of the things that I'm often asked by a lot of different customers is just, you know, when you look at what's off the shelf and look at what's been developed, there's a big push for the programmable telehealth solutions and telemedicine type solutions. And, you know, there's a lot of questions about, well, what's the advantage? Why go and build it and make it programmable, put it in your application versus an off-the-shelf video conference type of platform? So could you share some perspective as to the way you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first and foremost, we wanted to have a web-based solution, right? So whenever we're asking a patient to engage on our platform, it's usually a link, date of birth, and then they can just connect, right? And that can be in video, right? That could be doing forms or making a payment or completing some other task. But I think we wanted to make the experience frictionless. And so Vonage really allowed us to do that, in that we could you know, connect patients and providers through video on any device without having to download an app, without having to register, log in, or anything like that. So I think that was kind of first and foremost, is we wanted to remove some of the friction through apps and other things. From there, I think we wanted to control the experience, right? There's different workflow needs that a healthcare organization might need. They might, from whether, you know, it's doing on-demand visits, scheduled visits, group visits, transferring patients from, you know, one person to another. So really working with Vonage that has a global video infrastructure allowed us to kind of control the feature set and the workflows and provide the experience that our customers, you know, want us to provide. And so for us, that's been a really important piece. And then another important piece has been providing the ability for audio-only capabilities, or to bring in a translator, to bring in a scribe. And so we've worked with Vonage to really set up, you know, one-touch phone dialing from within a telehealth visit, and a provider can, you know, on demand bring in, you know, a translator, a scribe, whatever they need. And so, you know, really working with the back-end technology that Vonage provides allows us to focus on those front-end experiences and trying to create frictionless experiences for both the patients and the providers to connect.
And when you think about video, I mean, we all know, you know, back 3 years ago, there was a big push into video, and that was a great way for the, you know, the telemedicine, the visits we've talked so much about. You also hear some people saying, well, you know, that part's over. We're in a new kind of phase of COVID, and video is not needed as much. And I'd be interested, Matt, in your perspective, as you look at your current customer base and you look at the future. And again, there's lots of different technologies. We're all living in this hybrid environment, and even with my own family, 5 adult kids, it's interesting. They don't want to go see a doctor, you know, so there's a lot of discussion about, do you want to go or not? And do you have the decision whether or not you'll get reimbursed? And so I know we've had lots of discussions on that. It'd be great to get your perspective as to where you see all that coming. Is video still a mainstream solution, or do you think over time with some of the regulation and other changes in healthcare that it's going to be limited?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up regulation. I'm sure that's a huge topic here at the conference, with the end of the public health emergency being announced for May 11th. But I think every survey, it's clear that patients are looking for modern conveniences. And there's wins, I think, for everybody in that equation. So I think first and foremost, patients are looking for access. They're looking for convenience. They're you know, they have busy lives. They want to be able to book their own appointment. They want to be able to have telemedicine appointments. And I think healthcare organizations, when they offer those types of appointments, they see far lower no-show rates. So a no-show rate for an in-person visit, you know, would average 23%. For telehealth on our platform for all of 2022, our no-show rate was 7.4%. So even even in situations where maybe the technology isn't perfect, right? Somebody, if their battery dies or they don't have enough bandwidth or something like that, there's still an opportunity to create more access and to help more people by removing the friction and introducing a little bit of convenience to all of us as patients.
Yeah, and you say no-show, and that's another hot topic. A lot of discussion about, well, what's the real value to the patient and the providers for that matter. And so you mentioned no-shows. What other drivers are there in terms of benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see high satisfaction ratings. So I think, on the patient side, we'll see satisfaction ratings in, 97, 98% for telehealth visits specifically. Providers probably ranges somewhere 95, 96. So it's interesting that I think doctors and providers are interested in hybrid work, right? A lot of us, maybe in the corporate world, have started to work in hybrid capacities for a long time. Providers want that. We've seen some organizations that have gone primarily to telehealth actually start to see physician wait lists just to join the organization. So, and then, maybe not doing things solely through video, but if a patient can make a payment and a frictionless experience, from their mobile device before or after a visit, what happens? You see more payments made faster. If you want a form completed, you see more forms completed faster. So it makes a lot of sense. It's what we're all looking for, what patients are looking for, and there's really wins for every stakeholder in the process.
Okay, thanks. So last question before we open it up. A lot of discussion about, okay, COVID, we understand the impact. Moving past COVID, if you look at the U.S., there's a lot of challenges. There's skyrocketing costs, aging population, more and more people have chronic diseases. I think there was a stat, 4 out of 10 Americans have 2 or more chronic diseases. So I alluded earlier about AI, artificial intelligence, and all these technologies. As you look forward, again, past COVID and the new world we're living in, what are some of the bigger technology advancements do you think are needed to really continue this evolution to better serve patients and better connecting patients with healthcare providers?
Yeah, I think we're going to see first, more and more of us will have, digital experiences. Digital will play a part in that patient-provider relationship. And AI could potentially do all sorts of things from, collect your vitals to transcribing a session, doing notes for providers. Maybe, Chat GPT will assist providers in some kind of way. So I think healthcare right now is seeing a lot of pressure from staffing shortages, which is leading to margin compression for a lot of these organizations. And so I think technology can play a role to augment some of the care that's being provided and automate a lot of tasks that are happening every day, but are relatively routine that maybe somebody can do on their mobile device and so on and so forth, and really just have the organization and providers focusing on delivering care. So I think that's really where the future is going. You'll schedule your own appointment, check yourself in, vitals collected right on your phone. From there, maybe you go into a virtual visit. It's all transcribed. Notes are happening automatically for the provider. And I think what would be really interesting then is maybe patients and providers will be able to just spend more time interacting with one another, where the technology is handling a lot of the administrative burden and tasks that maybe aren't so valuable, and the patients and the providers can really just connect human to human again. Right. So that's really where I see things headed.
Yeah, that'll be interesting because being a big fan of AI, it's a lot of people think it replaces, and it really doesn't replace, it really augments. And I think there's a lot of opportunities, as you said. But we'll see. I mean, a lot to do, but certainly a lot of progress. So with that, we have a little time left, and we just wanted to open up to see if there were any questions. So if there are, if you don't mind, please raise your hand. I have some other questions I can ask them, but we'd rather hear from you. So would you mind, the gentleman in the back in the blue coat?
Hi, I'm Ken Rotundo. I'm the founder and president of a company called Rehavior. And I loved your last question, what can we do going forward? There's no doubt that what we're doing in telehealth improves access, reduces friction, takes geography out of the equation. And then we look at data. We know what, when, where, and how people are doing it. We know the patient's journey, and we know where to touch them along the way. What we don't know is the why. You know, and if you've read the work of the last 2 Nobel Prize winners in behavioral economics, Thaler and Kahneman, they said that people are irrational. That means payers are irrational, providers are irrational, patients are irrational, and I think we need to look at, one of the things we look at, and I'd love your opinion on, is what can we do to improve the understanding of why people make decisions, and how do we nudge them into the right, because we know that the adoption rate is not where it should be amongst caregivers using telehealth, and then the patients have their own irrational way. Do you think there's a future for people to go out there and better understand the patient at scale so that you can have one-on-one communication at scale and identify their idiosyncratic irrationalities on why they arrive at a decision? Does that make sense?
It does. Did you want to take it first, Matt, and I'll add my comments?
Yeah, and just to clarify the question real quick, you know, how do we drive more adoption of telehealth? Is that kind of the...
Right. Yeah. If you mind, I'll add a couple comments up front because I've been part of various AI initiatives for the last 10 years. And so my point is, I'm not worried about the technology. I think, as odd as it may seem, I think that's the easy part, right? I think the tools will get better. There's enough entrepreneurial spirit out there that I don't think it's a technology limitation, clearly. The technology will provide the valuable insight, improve decision-making. I think it comes back to the paradigm of just the different groupings of age. And I also think there's a heavy part in regulation. I've been in many countries over the last several years. And if you go to Singapore, where you have aging populations, or Japan or other places, it seems like there's more adoption, more universal than some countries like the US, which tend to be very structured and more regulated at times. So I think technology is not an issue in my mind. I think it's more just the societal adoption of how fast you want to progress. In countries, again, where they have aging populations, I think they're very fast to move towards innovation, and they take some of the policy as a priority. I think in the US, and Matt, I'd love to get your perspective, I think it's a little more limiting, because I agree with you, that would be the end-all answer, is to be able to get to those different generations, the older population, to show the value and not be intimidated by the technology. The technology is there to help, but I think there's perceptions and paradigms we need to get past. But Matt, what would you say?
Yeah, and I think we have to find ways for the government to stop creating barriers and really trying to make things difficult. And I think until value-based care really takes hold, and organizations are assuming more of the risk than government and payers, I think they're just going to behave irrationally because they've got they have the risk, and they're concerned about the risk over providing innovation, right? If organizations now start to take on some of the risk, and organizations are free to create the types of experiences that keep patients engaged and compliant in their care. I mean, imagine if you could use health benefits and communicate through a secure email, communicate asynchronously, right? What if we could remove the friction of an appointment altogether? No-show rates go to zero. Would we see more compliance and patients engaging in their care, right? So that's probably the next frontier for really driving adoption and compliance with patients. But we have to be in a place where we can innovate, where there isn't always another roadblock or something that you have to work through that maybe the government or somebody else has imposed.
We have time for one more. We have time for one more question.
Hearn, can you hear me? Yes. I'm senior advisor to the Connect to Health Task Force of the FCC, so I'm your friendly government representative here in this audience. And if you're familiar with the FCC, we have invested in enabling access to technologies through some recent funding that was done during the pandemic. But I want to follow up the question about the future of engagement. The concern that we are struggling with is this inequitable or unequal distribution of access and adoption and use when you talk about broadband. And so what is MEN doing to try to ensure that the services that you offer are available and can be provided to a broad range of population so that we don't increase further the digital divide? So if you could comment on that, because I think that's critical not only for organizations like yours, but for the healthcare system writ large.
Yeah, no, and first, I'd say thank you to the FCC, because I know a lot of our customers have benefited from the funding that's been put out there, and it's gone to a lot of organizations that are doing exactly what you're talking about. They're helping underserved populations, and they're using technology to do that. So, before the pandemic, it was all the state Medicaid plans that adopted telehealth. So that's really where we started, and unless you were doing commercial or self-pay, we were working with the state, different organizations from state to state and Medicaid programs. So from the very beginning, we've seen what access can do for equality and equity. And, folks that are in rural populations, folks that are in shelters, homeless population, whatever the case may be, we've seen and touched all of them. And I think a lot of studies have come out since the pandemic began as well, showing that technology and specifically telehealth can really make an impact with access and health equality.
Yeah, and I would agree. Thank you for the question and the point, because I think we're all in violent agreement with what you said. I used to live in Brazil, and I was there recently, and it's similar. How do you get out into the communities, the favelas and other parts? And it's the same thing. How do you get access? Because some people just don't have the local capability. And another point about the partnership with Vonage, and we're part of Ericsson as well. We're also looking at initiatives on a global basis as to how can we bring 5G and other types of technologies and leverage and work with companies like MEN to provide those services, because that's a big focus. Those underserved communities, whether it be Brazil, the US, there's lots of areas I think are just, they need the attention. And I'm hopeful, and probably like all of you, that we can truly leverage these technologies to better serve the peoples in the communities, because in the end, that's where there's a great need to have those types of capabilities and access to healthcare. So with that, I'm sorry we're out of time, but thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the time. And again, big thanks to Matt for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.